to expect from these cloud names through the end of the year, Evercore's Kirk, Materne. Kirk, contrast for us, if you will, Snowflake and Salesforce. We've just been talking about this, and part of it, I guess, is a maturity of the business, but part of it also the kind of momentum that these companies have.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think you all touched upon it a little bit in your prior discussion. Expectations plays a large role in sort of the reactions today. If you remember, if we talked about these two companies 3 months ago, you have had the exact opposite reactions, right? Snowflake sort of started to feel some pressure from some of its consumer internet and fintech companies. In May, they adjusted their outlook for that. Salesforce was doing well. They waited 3 months to sort of adjust their outlook for, I think what you're seeing is fraying at the edges of demand right now. I think the longer term trends around the shift towards digital, the shift to cloud, these are longer term trends that are continuing to play out. But companies are getting more conservative in terms of their spending in the near term. And when you look at Snowflake and Salesforce, you're right. They're two different type of companies. Snowflake is a high growth company in the early stages of its maturation. Salesforce is moving it, and as you rightfully say, they don't like to talk about getting more mature, but they are becoming more of a GARP story to a certain degree. So for them, it's not only about growth, it's about margin expansion. It's about the buyback. And so they're somewhat apples and oranges, but I think you're just seeing Snowflake kind of got ahead of the demand issues. Salesforce is sort of addressing those or addressed those last night.
Kirk, Q4 is showtime for enterprise software and, infrastructure, the cloud. And a lot of Q4 is driven by consumer demand, which to me is still a question mark. I mean, we've seen fatigue with the lower end consumer, but questions on whether the middle class and upper middle class is going to show up and to what extent for this holiday season. How much is that going to matter into Q1 and Q2 of next year, even for these enterprise players based on that?
It's not fair to say that the enterprise companies are completely immune to the consumer side of the equation, but there's certain industries, right? Retail, obviously, that might be more conservative around their spend on enterprise technology. But for the most part, spending on enterprise is more of a continuum. It's not advertising related. You can't turn it off and turn off. You want to invest in AI, cloud, you have to continue to invest in that or risk being left behind when we come through this economic cycle. And I think you've heard people like Bill McDermott talk about that. So while there will be potentially some more volatility in spend, and I think you're seeing that to some degree, the enterprise side of the market is just going to be more consistent. It's more secular, less cyclical. But that doesn't mean we're not going to continue to see some companies be able to fare better than others.
Kirk, you rightly called out a while ago that this would be what you called a confessional quarter, where companies that had not already adjusted their outlooks would have to, given the weakening macro backdrop. Are we done with that now? We certainly saw that from the likes of CRM, NVIDIA pre-announcing. Are there any big names out there you see that have yet to do so that could maybe give another leg down or make us wonder if enterprise demand could get weaker?
I think the good news is we're a long way through that, right? The June quarter companies, the July quarter companies, for the most part, have now reported. I think most of them have done a good job of just essentially embracing the fact that we're in a more choppy macro backdrop. And the reality is that deal cycles are going to get elongated in certain areas. Deals might get shrunk in terms of the absolute dollars spent. So I think we're a long way through that. I think that combined with valuations is what sort of sets the table for a potential rally in the fall. Are there some that haven't spoken yet since, say, June? You have Oracle and Adobe coming up in September. They're probably the next two big enterprise software companies. But I think the good news is that expectations into the second half of the year, I think, better reflect the macro reality. And that gives an opportunity that if things can normalize a bit, these stocks can start actually maybe putting up some upside to numbers as we get into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, those retail insights from Adobe this fall heading into the holiday season going to be especially potent. Kirk, Materne from Evercore, thank you.